Welcome back to my channel. This is the third part in my 4-part Lady Gaga makeup recreation series that I'm doing in honor of the Mayhem tour that's happening this year, especially for the one that's happening in Singapore. So I better see all you Singaporean monsters look really good because of my tutorials. If you can't tell already from my hair, I'll be covering some iconic graphic liner looks that Lady Gaga has worn over the last few years. So if you want to learn any of these looks here, feel free to skip to any part of the video using the timestamps linked down below. And without further ado, let's start with the first look, which is the look that she wore for her telephone music video. Specifically this one where she has all the cans in her hair. I personally don't drink canned drinks, so I have to do with just normal victory rolls. And this is actually my first time doing victory rolls. Only Lady Gaga can make me do my hair. In the telephone music video, I think she was really heavily inspired by the hairstyles of the 1940s and 50s, so I think a lot of victory rolls, pin curls, stuff like that. And that was reflected in the makeup look that she did, which I think is sort of a stereotypical kind of pin-up makeup look. So I'm starting off my base, just do whatever base routine you normally do. For me, I'll be using the IT Cosmetics CC Cream in light. I'm just using this to cover up any of my redness. And I just like to apply the foundation on with my finger first before going in with a brush. And I'm just pressing the foundation into my skin. I normally avoid my eye area as well because I don't really want to put as much liquid products on my eye just to prevent creasing. And I'm concealing my under eyes with my concealer, which is the Kosas concealer. And this time I'm applying just a thin layer of concealer on my eyes just to even out the colour. And again, I'm not applying too much, just enough to neutralize the colour a little bit. And also around my nose where I get a little bit of redness showing through. I'm using my loose powder to set everything, and I really like this Peri Para one for my oily skin. And for this look in particular, you do want to keep yourself looking quite the matte, especially because of how there are many different strong elements of this look. And I think that having glowy skin will be a little bit too much for the look. Now that my skin is fully matte, I'm going to go in and contour with my Judydoll contour palette and just defining my cheekbones, contouring around my temple, my forehead, my jawline, and using a smaller brush, I'm contouring my nose. So I'm doing this mostly just to add definition to my face, and you should do whatever just suits your facial features. And then to create a deeper set look to my eyes, I'm running the same contour powder on the hollow of my eye socket, so not necessarily in my crease because I have hooded eyes, so I'm using my eye socket as a guide to put my contour at. Next, I'm taking the Makeup by Mario Master Mattes palette in the neutrals, which is the color tone version, so basically any cool toned matte shadow would work. Taking this taupey brown shade on a flat kind of eyeshadow brush, and with my eyes open, I'm deepening up the contour that we did for our eye socket. So this is where we want to create a new crease, especially if you don't have deep set eyes. So this gives an illusion of an actual crease. I'm repeating that on the other side. And I'm using this brush to both apply the colour and to blend, so I'm not putting a lot of eyeshadow on at once. And on the outside of the eye, I'm dragging the shadow down in a straight direction and then blending the eyeshadow up towards my tail of the brow. Next, I'm mixing these two shades in the palette and getting some of the excess off, using it just to deepen the outside parts of the crease that we created. Just add a little bit of dimension to it. And applying a little bit of eyeshadow at a time allows you to blend as you go, so you don't actually have to use a separate brush for this. And I'm using the same shade on my lash line, forming a wedge, and then I'm connecting the wing to the outer corner of my eye and using whatever's left to flick it out. Doing the same for the other side, really working the shadow into my lash line, and then connecting it to the outer corner, then flicking it out. So doing that flicking motion really allows you to get a point in the outer corner of the eye. And I'm using whatever's left on the underside. So I'm connecting the outer corner of the wing to my lower lash line. Taking the darker brown, and this is the last shadow that I'm using to define the inner and outer corners, and I'm using more of that brown to deepen up the shadow on my lid. Now I'm getting most of the shadow off my brush, blending the shadow in a little bit towards my lid. I'm taking more of the dark brown just on the outer corner of my bottom lid, connecting it to the winged part that we did earlier. Now I'm taking a flat brush and going into this light beige shade, and I'm using this brush to do a soft cut crease. So I don't want to use concealer in this part, I'm just using the lighter eyeshadow to create a contrast between my lid and the crease that we did. And then I'm blending it out into the brown that we put in earlier. And I'm really placing the brush flat on my eye and dragging it out to stamp the eyeshadow into place. I'm also using the same beige to highlight my inner corners, bring it slightly down to the inner corner of my lower lid. And to further highlight, I'm taking a white eyeshadow and then highlighting my inner corner and then redefining the crease. So this time I'm using the tip of the brush to brush on the white to the edge that meets the crease. And then I'm using a little bit of white in the middle part of my lid as well. To further define my eye, I'm going to take a little bit of the brown, mix with a little bit of black, and then stamping it on the winged portion, bring it slightly onto the lid. In this case, I want to sharpen the wing as well, so I'm taking a little bit of my concealer on my brush, and I'm redefining the edge of my wing. Moving on to the liner part of my eye, I'll be taking a black gel pencil liner. Just putting dots of gel eyeliner on my bottom lash line. Just add a little bit more shadow. And I'm taking a small flat brush to lightly blend it under my eye. Before taking some black eyeshadow, smoking and blending it out. And I'm doing so to increase the longevity of the black liner on the bottom of my eye and prevent it from smudging out and I get oily and sweaty. And then I'm taking my white gel pencil liner and tightlining my waterline. And if there's any white that got on the lash line, I'm using some of the black again just to blend it out. Next, I'm taking my liquid liner and I'm doing a really long wing. So something that ends close to my temple towards the end of the wing that we put down. And I'm following the angle of my lower lash line, drawing a line out. And then using my finger just to straighten it out before it dries down fully. And then from 2/3 in, I'm doing my wing. If you don't have issues with drawing a liner all across your lid, you can go across into a full wing liner. Because I have an extra fold on my eye here, and if I do a line all the way in, it sort of looks kind of weird because it folds up and disappears. And I'm filling the space in, and now I'm just using the tip of my brush to smooth out the edge on top. And this one side of the liner done. And the hardest part now is just to try and replicate this on the other eye. So I'm starting off with my eyes open this time, and I'm drawing a dot where I want the liner to end, so that I can follow the angle. And then I'm doing my wedge and filling in the gaps. And I'm just gonna keep futzing around with it until I'm happy with the shape and the placement. I think I'm pretty happy with this wing. I'm gonna take more black eyeshadow now on the same small brush, and I'm connecting the outer corner of my eye into that wing. But I'm keeping the blend towards the bottom half of my wing because I want the edge of my wing to still stay sharp. To finish on my eyes, I'm curling my lashes, putting on mascara, and putting on a pair of falsies. For lashes, I'm using something that gives a cat eye effect to the eye. My lashes are now on, and I did draw on a thin line across the lash band using my black liquid liner. And now I want to draw a mole at the outer part of the right eye. Moving on to the brows. So for the brows, you want to go really dark and black, and right at the end of the brow, you want to flick it upwards. So I'm going straight into my black eyeshadow, and you want to embody 2016 block brow. So you just want to go straight in and fill in your brow. And you want the front of the brow to be blocky. I'm also using that small brush that I used earlier. On hindsight, this would have been better from the start. And then defining the front of the brow. So now at the end of the brow, I'm gonna extend it till it reaches almost to the end of the wing that we drew in, and keeping it parallel to the end of the wing. And then I'm filling in the rest of the brow. And you want to emphasize the arch of the brow, then connect it to the rest of my brow. Then I'm taking a little bit of concealer and carve out the bottom of the brow, and lightly blending it downwards and patting it in. I don't want to bring it too low because I don't want the eyeshadow that we put on our crease to get blended away. So I'm just putting a small amount and then patting the edges so that it blends. You can also use it to touch up the top of the brow to get a sharper look. And I'm taking the same beige shade that we did on our lid. I'm taking more of the beige shadow and then using it to set the concealer and give a brow highlight. Now that my brow is in, I think that I would need to redefine the inner part of my crease, so I'm taking more of that dark brown and I'm connecting that crease shadow into the eyebrow just a little bit, and I think this looks a lot more balanced than this. Now I'm just repeating this on the other side, marking out where I want my arch to be and where my tail starts. And then I'll go in and fill in the front of my brow. So this pre-mapping gives you a guide for where you should be putting your shadow. It's time to move on to the rest of the face. So I'm going to take a light powder. I'm using this one from Kohl. Basically anything that's lighter than your skin. And I'm using this under my eyes and on my cheekbones to give a matte highlight to my face, as well as the center of my face. I have slightly fairer skin, so I'll be going in with a little bit of a white and applying it on my cheekbone. And this time using my powder brush to blend it in, so we get that highlighted look without using any highlighter. You can just adjust this based on the depth of your skin tone. To add a little bit of colour to my face, I'm using some bronzer and brushing it in between the highlight and the contour that we did. Gaga didn't really use a lot of blushes, and even now she doesn't use a lot of blush on her face, so I'm trying to resist the urge to put on any blush and I'm replacing it with bronzer instead. I'm also touching up my contour. The last step is to do the lip, and you can just choose a burgundy lip colour. Again, think 2015 cranberry, burgundy, whatever lipstick that you have. I'm using this liquid lipstick from Colourpop just to fully emulate that 2015 vibe. You can also go in with a lip liner first just to define the edges, but I just like using the applicator itself to do so. And for this look, you do want a slightly more defined Cupid's bow, so I'm emphasizing mine. This list is a little dark, so I'm just going in with a little bit of lipstick and I'm using MAC Ruby Woo all over my lip just to try and make it a little bit more red. So this is Lady Gaga's telephone look done. Honestly, this is bringing me back to days of me trying out my first burgundy lipstick in 2015 and thinking that I was really brave for that. And I think I was, because I was a child. Pretty happy with how this look turned out. Again, the key points are to make the ring really long, really big, and to match that boldness with the really dark brow that's been flicked out at the end to match the angle of the wing, the mole, the really stark white highlight, and the burgundy lip. You know, this look sort of reminds me of that one picture on Pinterest that people were gagging over on Tumblr. I'm really feeling myself in this look, so I hope you learned something new. And now let's move on to the next one. Welcome to the Judas part of this video, where I'll be recreating this Judas look on my Lady Gaga in the music video. And at first glance, it might look pretty simple, but when you look a little bit closer, there's a lot more elements to this that you might not really think about. But in this case, it's not really a full block brow. I think some brow hairs were drawn up like this because there's some black line strokes on the brow itself below the eyebrow that was drawn on top of it. For me personally, I'll just be blocking my brows, but you also have the option of not blocking your brows. You can just go in and fill in your brows like usual and do the split brow using your own eyebrow. And then when it comes to the eyes, there are 3 different lines on the eye itself, and the challenging part about this is making sure that things are symmetrical. But first, I'm gonna glue down my brows and do my color correcting before going in and doing my base. So I'll be back in just a minute. And now that I'm done my base, let's move on to contouring. Going in with my Judydoll palette, carving out my cheekbones, and then putting some contour on my temple, bringing it onto my eye in patting motions because I don't want to disturb the concealed brows. Now I'm taking a fluffy brush and contouring my nose bridge. And I find that contouring is really important, especially when you're using a fuller coverage foundation, because everything looks kind of lost in the midst of all that full coverage foundation. And now I'm taking the same contour shades and then running it on just underneath my eyebrow. So I'm actually raising the shape of my brow bone, and I'm bringing the shadow down into my eye socket, just blending everything out. And at the end, I'm sort of bringing it out slightly and bringing it towards my temple. Next, I'm taking a cool toned matte palette, taking these 2 shades of brown here on the same brush. I'm using it to deepen up the crease that we made in the inner corner of my eyes and on the outside. And whatever's left, I'm going onto the middle of my brow bone. Now let's move on to the eyeliner part. It's gonna be kind of challenging and you just need a lot of patience. And I'm taking my eyeliner pen and making sure that it's kind of new and fresh. I don't want to be using a dried out pen because they'll just make your life a lot harder. And something sharp and thin will work for this. So I'm starting off with the top liner. I'm doing quite an angled wing. Now I'm bringing the wing in to my lid. And for this look, I am going to do my entire eyelid. And then I'm filling in the gaps. And then on the inner corner, I'm also doing a small little wing. Once in a while, I'm opening my eye, just to see how everything looks like when my eyes are open. And also extending down into the inner tear duct area. Now that the main line is down, everything else that we're doing underneath now will match the angle of this line. So for the first line on the bottom lid, we want to make the line match the top and extend it out further so that the ends of the tail form a straight line. Now we're going to do the inner corners. You're doing it at sort of an angle that matches the angle of your upper lid. And I'm drawing a line, doing the same in this eye. And I'm going to fill in this line first before I go in with the bottom line. So I'm going to draw a line with a little bit of a gap from the bottom lash line. And then we want to draw a point that's going inwards on the top curve. And then rounding it out. And now for the third and last line, I'm going to start from the bottom. I'm drawing in that rounded shape. And I'll connect it to the line here, making sure to leave a little bit of a gap as well as thickening out the line to match that of the line on top. And this is the graphic liner part done. And now we're just going to do the same thing for the brows. But I do want to map out the shape of the brows first before I go in with the liquid liner. And I'm not going to be doing that straight line thing that's happening on her brows. I personally just don't like the look especially after I took a lot of time to block my brows. So I'm going in some grey eyeshadow and I'm just drawing a straight line first. And the highest part of the brow will actually come at the winged part of the eye. So we're going to make it the highest point and extend it further out to the end of this wing. And then for the top brow, I'm going to split and go up. And then looking straight in the mirror when I do this because I'm trying to match both sides. So now that I've mapped out both of the brows, I'm going in with my liquid liner. And I'm going to go in and just trace the lines first. And then I'm going to thicken the line up. And then from the front, I'm doing an angled front. I'm doing the same for the other brow. So this is the eyeliner part done. I'm just going to curl my lashes, put on my mascara, and maybe a pair of false lashes. Pushing my lashes together using my lash curler. And running some liner on top of the lash band. Now I'm adding some more to my face with some bronzer. And I'm adding it at the apple of my cheek, sort of as a blush. And blending it into my contour. And then I'm taking the brightening powder in this palette and using it to highlight my face. Lastly, for my lips, I'm going in with a cool tone red lip. Gonna be MAC Ruby Woo. And this is the completed Judas look. As I said in the beginning, you don't have to block your brows for this. You can just draw your brows like normal, just maybe in a darker shade, and then do the split off from the end. Again, it's not as simple as you think it is, especially if you're going to block your brows and do the whole shebang. Honestly, this look is one of the more iconic looks that Gaga has done, especially back in the day when she used to do a lot more graphic liner stuff. Welcome to the last part of the video where I'll be recreating this poker face look. Lady Gaga herself also did multiple versions of this look, but I really like this one because of the hot pink on the eyes and the shiny iridescent lightning bolt. This look also features bleached brows, so I think you can skip it if you don't want to do the bleached brow. In this case, for the sake of recreation, I am going to do my full bleach brow, and that I covered in my second part of this video series. So you can watch the part of the video to learn how you can get that bleached brow look without actually having to bleach your brows. I'm back and everything has been done, so let's move on to the rest of the face. As usual, contouring my face with my Judydoll palette, and I've been opting to contour right after doing my base just because a lot of the looks that I've been doing require me to work a lot on the eyes and the surrounding area around the eyes, and I find that if I do my contouring after that, then I'll mess up the makeup because I like to put my contour at my temples, and that's where a lot of the liner and whatever else is on. And I've also been using my contour powder as a way to reshape my eyes just to get more of that deep set eye look. Moving on to eyeshadow, I'll be using my Colourpop Matte About Hue palette, and I'll be using these two pink shades to get that hot pink on the eyes. But because these shades tend to stain my eyelids, I'm going to go in with a layer of eye primer and a layer of setting powder on top of it, so as to try to minimize the staining on my lids. So I'm going in by Milk Hydro Grip Eye Primer, and I'm putting it all over my eyelids, as well as on the under eye, because that's where there's gonna be pink eyeshadow on top of as well. Then I'm using my setting powder, and I'm just packing on a layer of powder on top of the eye primer. So hopefully this gives me a little bit of a barrier against that really pigmented and bright pink that you'll be putting all over the lids. Before you go in with the pink, I want to first add some eyeshadow to my crease using some warm toned browns. I'll be mixing these two colours in this Juicy palette, then try and get this like reddish muddy brown colour. I'm using my pencil brush, and with my eyes open, I'm running that shade on my crease, and then blending it up slightly just to make sure that the edges are blended, but I don't want to bring it too far up. I'm adding a little bit of that brown to deepen the colour up, and then bringing that shadow into the outer third of my lid. So you want to keep the eyeshadow rather tight to the eye and not bringing it out too much. And I'm using the same shadow on the outer half of my eye, connecting it to the top part. And I'm taking a fluffy brush and blending out the edges. So I'll be mixing these two pink shades together, tapping off the excess, and then I'm packing the shadow on my lid. And I'm doing so in patting motions to really get as much pigment down as possible, and I don't want the colour to end up muddy. And I'm also bringing the shadow towards my inner corner. And then I'm lightly doing some sweeping motions to get the shadow onto my crease. And then with the tip of this brush, I'm patting some of the eyeshadow into my inner corner as well. And then I'm doing windshield wiper motions to blend the two colours together. And now that the pink is on, it's time to go back into the brown and then blend out the edges of the pink. I'm doing the same on my lower lash line. And then I'm just taking my pink again and blending everything together, focusing on the parts where the brown and the pink meet. And now I'm taking a black eyeshadow and applying some on my lash line on the outer third. And I'm taking my black jawliner and I'm tightlining both my waterlines on the top and bottom. I'm taking some black eyeshadow on a small angled brush, and I'm stamping the eyeshadow along my lash line, and I'm smoking out the outer corner of my lower lash line with it. And then to complete the eye look, I'm curling my lashes, putting on my mascara, and also false lashes. And this time I'm choosing lashes that are a little bit on the spikier side. Now we're going to move on to the lightning bolt part of the look. I'll be using my Haus High Power Pigment in black for this, just because I find that having a squeezy tube or like some sort of gel liner makes it so much easier to paint on large areas of black compared to just using a liquid liner pen. But before we move into the eyeliner, we're going to map out the shape of the lightning bolt first. I'll be using a really flat brush for this. This is for eyeliner. And I'm taking some grey eyeshadow, and I'm essentially going to stamp on and draw on the shape of the lightning bolt before we go in with the jaw liner. We're going to draw a line past the inner corner eyeshadow that we did, and we're going to continue that line all the way down to the corner of our mouth. And then from the middle of our eye, where the pink meets the brown and black, we're going to draw a line straight down from there and meet that point beside the mouth. And then we're going to angle this into our eye. For this point, we want to start from the outer corner of the eye, and I want this to be parallel to this front line in the beginning. I'm drawing a line down, leaving a gap between this line and the middle. We're going to draw a line down to meet it. And then for the top part, you want to follow this line all the way up here, and then draw a triangle down to meet this line. And now that my lines have been mapped in, I'm going to go in with the pigment, and I'm going to apply an even layer on this brush, just so that I can draw it on straight down, or I could also use it as a paddle brush and fill in the gaps. So first, I will be tracing the lines that we did, and then filling in the gap with the brush. Also going in with my smaller brush to smooth out the edges, especially on the smaller parts of the face, especially on the smaller parts of the bolt. I'm going to do the same for the rest. And for the pink part, we want to stop the liner at the pink portion of the eye. For the top part, we want to fill in this area. For the top triangle, I'm just gonna go in with my smaller brush and draw a line at the bottom and essentially drawing out a triangle and filling it in with the pigment. And now that I'm happy with the shape, I'm gonna connect this outer liner into my eye using some black eyeshadow and blending it into that crease. And I'm gonna do the same for the other eye. Now the lightning shape is filled in. I'm gonna go in with this really shimmery gunmetal shade, and this is from Glam Shop PL. And I really like this for this effect because it doesn't just only have silver shimmers. There's other colours of shimmers in it that give it a more multi-dimensional look. But if you don't have an eyeshadow like this, you can just go ahead and use whatever silvery, shimmery, glittery eyeshadow that you have. Press it onto the black. As you can see, this shade has a lot of different colours of pigment in it. So I'm seeing some green, some gold, some purple, and some blue. And this gives almost like a holographic look to the eyeliner. And you can see the difference between the eyeliner that we put on some shadow on and without. And again, I'm mostly dabbing the eyeshadow on because if you're using liquid liner, I find that rubbing it around too much does make the eyeliner shift underneath. And this also helps to prevent glitter fallout on your face. And this is how it looks like when all the eyeshadow is being applied, and it's so pretty. And to finish off this look, you want to go in with a pale pink lipstick. I don't actually have a pink lipstick that's similar to what she's wearing. So I'll be taking my pink color corrector from Kosas in the shade Magic and dabbing it on my lip. And then I'm dabbing some pink lipstick on top of it. And this is hypothetically the colour you should be putting on. I don't think it looks really good on me, so I'm going to change it up a little bit to make it so that I'm not looking like I'm sick. Just going in with the same lipstick without the concealer on it. But if you can pull off that pale pink, go ahead and use it. It's just not for me. And this is the look completed. It's high-key giving me raw XD, but it's really cute. And I think it still look good even if you don't bleach your brows. But I think doing the bleach brow really helps to bring up the edginess of the look, especially with the combination of the pink and black. So this is the end of the video. So in this video, I covered 3 different graphite liner looks. It doesn't mean that the other looks that I did before this didn't involve any sort of graphite liner, but the graphite liner in the looks featured in this part are the star of the show. So hopefully watching me break down these looks gives you a better idea on how to approach them, especially as doing graphite liner is a little bit of a chess game where you need to strategize what parts you want to do first, just to make things easier for you further down the line. So if you've enjoyed this video, feel free to subscribe, like and share this video with your friends, especially those who are going for the concerts as well. Let me know which look is your favorite, and if you want to see more of my stuff, you can follow me on my social media accounts, mostly on Instagram and TikTok, and I hope to see you in the last part of my video series as well as my other videos. So I'll see you guys there.